Looking to find harmony and work-life balance? Join Coach AnnaJo as she shares practical strategies, empowering mindsets, and inspiring stories to live the life you want to lead on AnnaJoTalks, Work Life for Badasses. Now, here's your host, Coach AnnaJo.
Welcome everyone to another episode of AnnaJoTalks, Work Life for Badasses. I'm Coach AnnaJo, and I'm here to challenge the myth of balance and find harmony in modern life. Today's episode, I want to get started with some reflections to get started this episode and to introduce our special guest. Have you ever felt you had to hide part of yourself to fit in? Do you think anyone on your team, at work, or in your family has? Do you wish you could be part of an inclusive community where people feel seen and heard, and different experiences and perspectives are valued? Yes. Then this episode is for you. If it's a yes, this is episode for you. Yes, this is a conversation for everyone, and it will require you to think about yourself, those on your team, and in your life in introspective ways. Our guest is an expert who delves into the profound concept of unhiding. What makes her uniquely relevant is a defining experience when she was questioned about the diversity of leadership at an organization she was part of, and courageously shared how she didn't feel included in that discussion. Her differences were dismissed. She realized that she was still hiding parts of herself. This pivotal interaction sparked her profound realization that the way we frame diversity conversations can inadvertently force people to hide essential aspects of their identity. This insight propelled her on her transformative journey. She is not just a TEDx speaker, she is the best-selling author of the books Single-Handedly Learning to Unhide and Embrace Connection, and Unhide and Seek. Live your best life, do your best work. With wisdom and compassion, she's here today to engage with us in how to unhide our best selves and foster an environment of belonging. Welcome to my best special guest, author, speaker, inspiring leader, a friend, and with a heart the size of the world. Welcome, Ruth Rathblott. Please, here we are. How are you?
Oh, your energy, AnnaJo, is just unbelievable and amazing. And I'm so excited to be here and delve into topics. But your energy to set us up, I don't know if I can match it. It's so good. It's so good.
So good to have you. It's so good to have you. Like reading these, but like the energy up. It's you. Oh my God, Ruth, thank you so much. I'm so honored to have you, my guest at AnnaJoTalks, Work Life for Badasses, because I know you are a badass. All right. Are you ready for this?
I am ready. Let's do it.
Let's do it. All right. So, Ruth, we know around like it for years, right? I think I met you. You didn't not notice me, but I met you. You were in my radar when I saw you talking at the NSA, my first time ever there when I was, visiting like 4 years ago. And I saw you doing the 2-minute speech, my first meeting there. And it was mind-blowing. All right. But before we go on the details, so how would you like to share your story, your journey with us here? And you can start whatever you want to start, but I would love for us, what is your story?
Sure. AnnaJo, I was one of those people who always admired women specifically who had 2 or 3 careers in their lifetime. Do you know those women, the women that, pivot and they have a career and then they pivot to another career? And I thought that will never be my life. Like, I am on track to be a nonprofit leader. That's where my space is. I spent 25 years running nonprofits, working with young people on access to education, access to career, access to mentors. And at one point, I was in a conversation, like you referred to in the intro, I was in a conversation about diversity and leadership.
Okay.
And we were talking, and I asked a really naive question. I said, "Do you see me as diverse?" And the answer back was, "Not really." And for your audience, I am a white female. I identify with she, series pronouns. I'm heterosexual. I'm not who you typically think of when you think of diversity. And so the answer back was, yeah, not really. I guess, I mean, if we're talking about diversity, Ruth, we're talking about race, we're talking about gender. So I guess you check the box on gender. You're a woman. And I thought, I said, well, I'm curious as a follow-up question, what about my disability? I was born missing my left hand. I was born with a limb difference. For your audience, I have a missing left hand. And when I asked that question, the answer back was, oh, well, we don't even see you like that. We don't see you as having a
Mm.
disability. And I got really upset. I got really upset because I wasn't asking to be seen as anything. I was asking for it to be acknowledged as part of the diversity conversation.
Okay.
And I started to reach out to corporate partners where I'd done a lot of fundraising over those 25 years, asking them what was the DEI conversation looking like? How was disability specifically showing up in that conversation?
Yeah.
And it really wasn't. And so one of my corporate partners invited me in to give a speech. And probably like a lot of us, AnnaJo, we're used to giving speeches around our work, not
Yes.
necessarily around our lives.
Yes.
And I asked my contact, I said, well, what should I talk about? I mean, I'm used to galas and events and being mission driven. What would I come in and talk about? And he said, come in and share your story. That story
Ooh.
you just shared with me. He said, and talk about how for 25 years you hid your hand from everyone. Talk about that. And that sometimes the way we define diversity contributes to people hiding. And AnnaJo, I was offered a car ride to go to this and for them to do my makeup. And I said,
Oh.
sure, it sounds fun. I went, and sure enough, I gave the speech and people came up after and they were so grateful for including disability, both the visible disabilities like my physical disability in the
Yeah.
conversation, as well as the non-apparent disabilities like mental health and neurodiversity. And it was definitely reaffirming for this piece. And then what stuck even more, AnnaJo, was this idea of hiding. And that's what people really resonated with, this idea that most of us are hiding something about ourselves. I hid my limb difference, my hand, for 25 years. I hid it in pockets. I hid it under sweaters. I hid it behind bags. I was so afraid that if someone found out, they wouldn't like me. They wouldn't understand. They wouldn't hire me.
Mm-hmm.
So I kept
Mm-hmm.
it hidden. And what I realized is so many of us are hiding parts of ourselves and we're so afraid of that rejection and that judgment, and it holds us back. And so I did a badass career move.
Oh
I
my God. Yes.
left that nonprofit life and quote unquote pivoted, which was a big cliche word, right? I pivoted to becoming a professional speaker and an author who works with forward thinking leaders around how do they transform their culture so that employees can unhide and thrive and belong. And that's where I spend a lot of my time, is talking about this idea of unhiding.
Oh my God, I love it. I love it so much. This is really a badass move. All right. Let me just tell here to everyone, all listeners, we have a badass move here. Wow. So, but I'm very curious, like, because this is something that I always like to dive in, is about the decision making, right? So you talk about like being inspired to be this person that make a connection for others to be seen as well, right? So, but regarding to yourself, right, and to be in this space that then you are this role model, right, and share and be vulnerable. So, is there any work that you had to do as well for you to be in this space and to make that decision, right? So tell us more about like what's the base of this decision making and what type of actions that you felt it was necessary for you.
Oh, yeah. No, it's such a good question because, and I'm glad you're highlighting it, because unhiding is not an overnight process.
Okay, yeah,
Not
yeah,
like
yeah.
I woke up one day and said, I think I'm going to start sharing part of myself. That
Yeah.
And I imagine for your listeners too, if they're hiding parts of themselves, whether it's health piece or whether it's something the way they look or the way they act or the way they talk,
Yes.
it's not an overnight process where after this episode, people are going to be like, oh, I'm just going to start sharing everything. That's not how it works. It was,
Yeah.
I had to do a lot of work, and it started with therapy in terms of why was I,
Oh, okay.
me, AnnaJo, it was, why was I quote unquote failing in relationships? Why wasn't I connecting more, especially in dating relationships and partner relationships? I wasn't making the connection, and it seems obvious now, but I wasn't making the connection between this hiding part of myself and feeling connected. I wasn't in
Yeah.
relationships and success. And so it started with therapy. And what was amazing in that journey was the idea I was just starting to date someone, and the
Mm.
therapist suggested, he said, what about this person as a potential person that you unhide to? Like, and he didn't even use the words unhide, but he was like, what if you shared a little bit more or revealed a little bit more and treated this one as safe? And what was amazing is this person was safe. They were someone who was curious, right? They listened really well. They asked really interesting questions. They were kind. They showed
Yeah.
empathy. And they actually even revealed part of themselves while I was sharing. So they talked about their own journey of feeling different. And what that allowed for was, by inviting that one person in, AnnaJo, it allowed for me to start to accept part of myself, because I had struggled for 25 years thinking I was the only one who had felt different. I was the only one that was hiding something about myself. I was, that adage that sometimes we hear in magazines or on Oprah and Dr. Phil of, I thought I had to learn to love myself first before
Yeah.
I could be in relationship. And I found out that wasn't exactly true. And so it was about inviting someone in as a first step.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Can we go there? Because it's huge. And I think, like even for myself and thinking and I heard this on your TED talk. You talk about like there is this part of love yourself first, and as a coach, as a life coach, I use that as well.
Mhm.
And I'm very curious how you define, because I believe that you feel that you need to love yourself not first. You'll need to love yourself. Let's put the things like that. But inviting someone to love yourself as well. And can we go there and see what your thought process of what I'm very curious about that, and I'm sure our badasses listeners as well, because I think there's deep truth here. Yes.
Yeah. No, it's so funny. If before all of my research and writing, I would have
Yes.
absolutely stood behind that statement of, you have to love
Yes.
yourself first.
Absolutely.
I even did my senior thesis in college studying a guy named Leo Buscaglia, who's like the love coach.
Gotcha.
He talks about you have to love
Yes.
yourself first. And I disagree, because sometimes there are parts of ourselves that we don't know how to start to love, because we've created a narrative about it, a narrative that's not always accurate about that part of ourselves. Again, for me, it was my hand. I created a narrative, AnnaJo, that said, this is ugly. This is disgusting. This is horrible. Nobody would love this. I don't even love it. I wasn't sure how to do it. And there were so many times I tried to unhide. There were so many times I tried to say, well, I'm going to start a new job and I'm going to show everyone, or I'm going to go on a date and I'm going to just tell somebody. And then those voices that I heard about my hand were so dismissive, were so awful, that I kept it hidden, because
Yeah.
that's what felt safe. And so I wasn't sure how to love that part. I actually thought and really believed that I would never love that part of myself. And I
Mm.
had a coach who said to me at one point, we were working together, and she said, do you see yourself as a whole woman? And I said, what do you mean? And she said, well, if you have to ask, what do you mean? Then I guess we need to go.
Yes.
Um,
Okay.
and I said, yeah, I'm confused. What do you mean? She said, you talk about yourself as two different people in terms of that hidden, your hand is a piece of you
Yeah.
like, that you talk about very separately than your career and your experience and your expertise. How do we bring those together? And I just wasn't sure how to do it. I wasn't. And so it's about inviting someone in to show you how to love yourself. Sometimes that's a big piece for me is sometimes we can't do it, what I call single-handedly. Sometimes we
Yes.
can't do it on our own. And so how do we allow for others to show us those parts of ourselves and show us how to love those parts of ourselves that we can't
Wow.
alone?
I love that.
And
I think I'm learning here really listening to you because I'm reframing the concept of love yourself first because love yourself first exists, but it's
yeah,
about the process of love yourself really. And I think you mentioned about yourself, but that I believe that as well in other situations of your life. I think this could be applicable in different chapters in different situations. um like even like aging, right? So it's like so
yes,
much in terms of how can we love ourselves first, yes, but being vulnerable and have this, I think it's an act of courage. This is what comes in my head, like
yes.
inviting someone in and allow this safe space, or at least try to have this safe space and have other ones to help us to reframe and teach us how to love parts that we are hiding.
100%. Because think about, AnnaJo, the external messages we get about how we're supposed to show up, how we're supposed to
Yes,
fit in, how we're supposed to. So to combat those, we think we have to do it alone. We think we have
yes,
to get there and read enough self-help books, do enough coaching, do enough therapy. And yet, sometimes there are things that we can't do on our own. So I mean, think about there's childhood trauma that people have faced.
yeah,
There's education differences that we have. There's finances that people hide. There's just like you're saying, there's even this idea of aging that so we have to hide. So we have to cover ourselves.
yeah,
And part of it, we're taught those things. We're taught in order to be loved, to be truly loved, you have to hide parts of yourself, right?
yes,
Because nobody will love your differences. And yet, so that's the message. And yet then the truth is that when we're hiding, we feel so alone. We feel so lonely
mm,
and we feel not connected to ourselves or to others. And so how do we create that space? And again, I'm a huge advocate of this. We can't
yes.
always do it by ourselves. So
I
how do
love that.
we invite someone in that we do trust, that does show empathy, that has kindness and curiosity? Those are checklist things that if your listeners are thinking about who to invite in, thinking about those qualities are going to be important and even adding to them.
Yes. Oh my God, I love that. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Woo! I knew this was going to be fire. Thank you so much. All right. Okay. All
Well,
right. So
can I add that I think
absolutely.
when we
I'm
start
just processing still.
Yeah, no, I think when we invite somebody in, it starts to take off that toughness or those walls around us, right? So
Yeah.
when others start to come into our lives and start to see us as, I don't even love the word always authentic, but they see us as real. They see us as being, some of the guardrails are down, some of the toughness is down, as much as we want to be badasses, some of what's the gentle part of that? What's the space that you can invite others in? Because
Yeah.
that's literally what happened to me. As soon as those guardrails came down and I allowed someone in, I allowed
Yeah.
for others to come in. And it was
Yeah.
this beautiful building of community that is really the third step in unhiding, is that
Yes.
allowing for that space to have others come in and share their experiences, some similar and some not so similar, but finding those people, finding your
Yeah. I love that. I really do. And I think, that is the part of where vulnerability comes as it's okay to have it. It's a strength.
It's a
And
badass quality. It
it
is a
is a badass quality. I like that. Yes. 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 An act of bravery. I'm coming like Brené Brown, like comes to my head right now, right?
right.
Act of bravery to be vulnerable and then allowing someone else coming in and, teaching us how to love ourselves
Yes.
even more, or parts of us that are hidden.
And
I
realizing
love it.
and realizing that we're not alone in this. Like that's
Exactly.
the beautiful thing is and it's not an overnight process. It doesn't,
Exactly.
and I think part of it is when we are allowed and we create that space to start to share those stories, we then allow for someone else to start on their own journey of acknowledging where they felt like they had to hide and then thinking about the inviting someone in. Like we create that. So that's why I do the work I do is I share my story and my story about my hand as a tool to say, hey, what are you hiding? Where are you holding yourself back from connecting, from thriving, from being a badass? Like, where is
Yeah.
that? Like, that's why I share my story so that people
Yeah.
can start their own journey.
I love it. All right. Okay. And I know you are a badass because since I met you, I think the 4 years ago, the book was not yet there. So, and you were about to have your TEDx. I think it was that year or the next year, something like that. So, and within like the last 4 years, you did like one TED Talk, two books. Now we are on stages around the country, and that's kind of a badass as well. Like move, as you say, when you're telling us our story and the work you did and the passion you have to be this role model. But tell us, like, how was look like this journey? How does it happen in such a short time? So much happening and so much transformation to impact the world and be the leader in this space.
No, and thank you for that. Because even I'm sitting here being like, yeah, that has been a lot in a short amount of time. And it is, I think sometimes we're always thinking about next and we forget to pause for what we've done so far. Right. And so this journey, yeah, I took a sabbatical from work and worked on a TEDx talk. AnnaJo, my first one was canceled. And so talk about
Oh,
defeating, like this feeling of, oh my gosh, I guess this message isn't important. It was COVID. So, of course, that's why something gets
yeah,
canceled and
yeah.
I get it. But you spend so much time working on something, thinking, I'm going to put this message out in the world, and then it's canceled. So, it's almost like a hero's journey, right? You build and then you build it and then it's canceled. So, what do
Oh
you do
boy.
with the challenge? And I was grateful that I had an amazing TEDx coach who said, this needs to be heard. Like you're ready. This needs to be heard, and helped me find another opportunity to share the message. And it was almost like the TEDx AnnaJo was this trailer for the bigger story. It was like the
Oh, okay.
of, hey, this is something that I'm going to share with you about my journey of hiding. This is a message and a kind of an idea worth spreading that most of us are hiding something. And then the first book single-handedly was really the idea of, let me share my full journey with you. Let me share those moments where I felt like I had to hide for those 25 years. Let me tell you what it was like to unhide, how I found strength to unhide. And I thought the first book was going to be it. Like, yeah, all of us have a book in us. All of us have more thoughts, and especially as we're on stages and we're coaching people and consulting, we hear stories. So we get more information about this thing that we're sharing. I'm sure it happens to you, right? Like you learn more from your clients, from the places that you're
Yes.
speaking. And I was with another coach, and I so believe in coaching and coaches. I was with a coach, and he said, I love your first book. If I'm a leader and a CEO, I may not have time to read it. I need something that's quick and short in terms of what is hiding, why is it a problem, and how do I unhide? I need a mass marketing book, something that I can pick up and read on a plane.
Mm-hmm.
And I really was not looking to write a second book so quickly, so soon. And his message to me was, you have 90 days to do it, and it's going to be 10,000 words. It's more like 17 or 19,000 words. But I got it done in those 90 days because it's this tool of, I want it to be accessible for people to sit there
Yeah.
and say, what am I hiding? Like there's a inventory in there about what am I hiding? There are 4 archetypes of hiders. There are people, AnnaJo, when I talk about hiding, they know exactly what I'm talking about, right? They say, oh, I've been hiding, whether it's, I have people share, they hide their divorces, they hide their trauma, they hide
Mm,
their
yes.
education, they hide their finances, they hide their dreams and their
Yeah.
aspirations because they're so afraid of, the fear is the rejection and the judgment. Then there are people who say, I'm not hiding anything. I'm an open book. Like everybody knows everything about me. And yet I still think that's a form of hiding because they're curating what they want you to see. There's sometimes things behind that, right? Like that
Oh,
we don't
yes.
see. There's also the archetype of and the type of hider who is curious. And maybe it's some of your listeners who are thinking, what am I hiding? Like, what is it that I'm hiding that's holding me back? And then there is the fourth type, and I met one of them recently. I've met a few of them recently who are like, I'm not sure why we should unhide. I'm not sure why, like, I'm not unhiding anything. I'm not going to do it. I call it the fortress. The space, the people, and maybe there's some of your listeners who are like, I don't want to unhide. It's not safe. That's absolutely
Mm-hmm.
right. And so wherever you find yourself on the spectrum of hiding, there's a space to discover more about yourself. What's holding you back from thriving? What's holding you
Oh,
back from connecting and belonging?
wow. And here comes the curiosity. We'll talk a lot about curiosity, and I love that because I believe it's really a trait or a quality that we can use even in those moments, right? So if you're curious about what am I hiding? Why am I hiding? Right? So be curious and stay there and try to find, insights, not answers, but insights. What does it look like for me here? That's amazing. Yeah.
And when is it safe to share parts of ourselves, right? Thinking about
Yes. Oh,
people
yes.
we
Yeah.
surround ourselves with. And I have to tell you, what's heartbreaking, I would say heartbreaking is probably the best word for it, is that in 2024, there are still spaces where it is not safe to unhide. There are spaces, whether it's the trans community, whether it's a religious group like the Jewish community,
Oh,
there's
yes.
where it doesn't
Yeah.
always
Yeah.
feel
Yeah.
safe to unhide. And
Yes.
so I call that strategic hiding, being smart about where can you think about hiding? Where does it feel safe? And where does it feel safe to unhide, even if it's just with one other person? People don't have to go on a podcast to unhide. They can unhide and share with just one other person to start.
Gotcha. Oh, yeah. 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 Yes. Absolutely. Oof. I'm processing. I will tell you, like I'm getting in. Oh, yes. 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 That's I would call like a disruptor, like a safe disruptor, right? So where, okay, I'm hiding here. Is it safe? So yeah. Yes. Yes, because we have this thing about like, especially right now in the era where we live, um, where we need to be ourselves, whatever, right? So, and then we don't feel comfortable. And if you're not in our skin yet, right, we are discovering how does it look like? So it's also not authentic because we don't feel good in and then there's um, an operation from ourselves. And I hear you. I hear you. So
And
going on your journey, how does it look like? Being curious and do this journey as it is, right? So with I love
I
it.
think part of it too is, let's say somebody, one of your listeners isn't ready to unhide, right? They're not ready to
Yeah.
start that journey of the curious. What about being curious about others, right? And curious
Yes.
about what they may be hiding? Because I think sometimes we make assumptions about people's behavior rather than somewhat checking it out and finding and being curious, and just asking. And sometimes when we need to, rather than assuming. And that's a big space for me is this. I think we make assumptions. I know I did as a leader. Like I thought about someone's performance and how they were showing up. And I sometimes missed people because I forgot about the people part. I forgot about the questions that what
Yes.
might else be going on in someone's life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And yeah, and so many times like in organizations that this is business. What are you talking
Right.
about, right? We still use that. I heard this several times. This is business.
This is, and it may be holding us back in terms of how we're seen, right? So whether
Yeah.
it, I've had people share with me, I had someone come up after one of my presentations, and I share this example a few times because I think it's relevant. I had someone who said that in meetings, they hide part of themselves, they hide their stutter. I've had people share they hide an accent because they're so
Mm,
afraid of the judgment, right? Of what someone, so they shift, they change their accent, they change the way they speak, or they don't speak up. And so this person looked for every exit during the end of a meeting to get out.
yeah.
And I said to him, I said, that must feel exhausting and lonely when you're just so worried about how to get out of a meeting rather than being in the meeting.
Yes.
And
Yes.
he said, it's totally exhausting. I'm like, you're not really present then. And I said,
Yes.
then, AnnaJo, there's a group of people that are watching that, right? Your team is saying to you, well, this person always wants to get out of the meeting. They never have any good ideas. They're never contributing. They're not a team player. They don't go to the happy hour after work. They don't show up at the team retreat. Like they don't have any good ideas. So they're making assumptions about your performance and who you are without actually knowing a piece of what it is that you're hiding. And so
Yeah.
how do you start to create that space so that whether it's just sharing it with a manager, whether it's sharing it with a close colleague, a coworker, a friend, like just to allow for that space, because it impacts how leadership sees you. It impacts your career. It impacts even your innovation and creativity,
Oh, yes. Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
So that's the part I talk about with hiding is how is it holding you back? And what are the assumptions that people are making about you without you even knowing because you're hiding?
Yeah, I love that. I love that. But, I will listen to you, and I am relating a lot within my experience as a leader and a people manager as well, and being in the room. Because in big organization, we call the calibration time, where we talk all about the people, like who's performing, who's not performing. And yes, the conversations in that room is mainly this is business, right? How perform, how showed up, how manage the stakeholders, how was the influence, and yes, and if something happened, like I don't know, like even a divorce, you said something like that, when it happened, and or even like sickness, right? So it's like have a sickness leave or something that that was less in. I'm not saying that it was not there because that really depends who's advocating for you. So that's why you're talking about like to have the relationship with who's advocating for you, and that's important in an organization. But yes, it was less highlighted, I would say.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I have had people tell me, AnnaJo, that they hide their kids at work. Moms hide their kids at work because they don't want to be passed over for promotion because they'll think, oh, well, I'm not that serious about my job because I have kids. I've had people share that they don't hide to your point around illness, they don't hide their health challenges. I mean, just a few weeks ago, I had someone say, I haven't told anyone that I have cancer at work. Well,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
how do we
Yeah,
allow for support then? How do we allow for to understand someone's behavior, why they're calling out for
yeah,
medical appointments, or how can we best support them? Because that's really a manager and a leader's job is how do we
yeah.
support? It's really a friend's job. If we don't know things
Yes,
going on,
yes,
how do we allow
absolutely,
for that support that we may need?
absolutely.
That's the part of hiding, right? Like
Yeah,
it contributes, like we started out this conversation, we can't love ourselves if we don't allow for others to come in and help us do that. We can't, especially
absolutely.
if it's a healthcare crisis, if it's being a mom, if it's all those pieces of whether it's trauma, finances. Again, I go to those things because those are the things that people are hiding.
Yeah. Ooh, all right. This is good. All right. And talking about organizations,
Mhm.
and in your book, in your TEDx, you talk about diversity and in organizations, and you talk about redefine diversity fully inclusive. Would you like to share a bit more about this? Because I'm very passionate about this topic within my organization. Former years in the corporate, I was a lead of one of ERTs for women in science. So it's very close to me, and a passion as well. So I'm very curious about what does that mean, redefine diversity fully inclusive for you.
Sure. So when I had that conversation about diversity and leadership, and I came to the realization that my disability, the way that they saw me, first I had to get past the idea of being seen as someone with a disability. I had to get comfortable with the word disability because there is still a lot of stigma and stereotyping about what disability itself means.
Mm,
And it wasn't showing up in those diversity conversations. Even though we talk about diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, disability is still not always included in those conversations. We focus a lot on really important pillars. We talk about race, which is super important. We talk about gender, again, super important. And often we talk about sexual orientation, and that's still like something that's super important, but we could be talking about even more. And yet disability is the
you're right.
largest minority group. It is 1 in 4 people have a disability, whether it's visible like mine or non-apparent like mental health or neurodiversity. Disability is the greatest intersector of all in terms of diversity. You can be any race, any gender, any age, any sexual orientation, and have a disability. And the other thing, AnnaJo, that's amazing is about disability is you can have disability impact you at any point of your life, and it most likely will, because you can be born with a disability, you can acquire a disability, or you can be taking care of somebody with a disability. So when I heard that they didn't see me as having a disability, it meant that I actually was still hiding. I was still not sharing part of my journey with people, right?
Oh,
About
okay.
this. And when I started to go into companies and talk to them about how was disability showing up in their diversity and inclusion efforts, it's disability ERGs, employee resource groups, are some of the hardest to start because there is that stigma of disability still. I think it's getting better. I think COVID allowed for mental health to be talked about for the first time
Yes.
for many people. I think neurodiversity is also, whether it's ADHD, whether it's dyslexia, whether there are so many aspects of neurodiversity that are starting to really be something we talk about. And what I'll say is those ERGs are some of the hardest to start because there's a self-identification that's required to start them, right? There's trusting in the company that if I share this part of myself, there's no retaliation, right? That this will be supported. This will be accommodations for all of us will be included, like to be thought about. What are the policy changes that we need to start to think about?
Yeah.
And so disability ERGs are so critical. And then the part that you and I talked a little bit about is this idea of allyship also, right?
Yeah.
If I identify as an ally to a certain ERG that I'm not part of as my identity, will people then think of me that way? Will they think, oh, well, she's just hiding or he's just hiding part of themselves. That's why they're interested in this. That's not the reality. I mean, you've even talked about being an ally to a different group, right? That you're not
Yeah. Yeah.
necessarily
Yeah.
part of. And yet there's that stigma sometimes, and especially with disability, that if I am curious and I'm interested and I join, that someone will think that about me, because we still have a negative connotation with the word disability, a negative even denotation, connotation and denotation, right? Those are the two words of what disability means. And how do we start to understand it? How do we start to appreciate the strengths and the challenges that go along with disability? And so when I talk about inclusion, I talk about this idea of how do we allow for different experiences and different perspectives in terms of inclusion and diversity work. So it is critical to redefine diversity and allow for all of the areas of difference to show up.
Wow.
Does that make sense?
Thank you. Makes all sense. I'm like looking forward to hear this again. It's that absolutely. Wow. And I resonate. Why I'm saying that is because I was part of a ERG in a big organization. There was plenty of ERGs. I was woman in science, right? So, but there was plenty of women in sales, women supply chain. There was, each big department or function had the ERG. For women, for instance, there was, like all the races and the LGBTQ. We called the Pride ERG. So there was different ones, but there was not the disability one. Actually, I think you're right. After COVID, there was the neurodiversity to be formed, like to start to have like some interest to build something. But there was not, and it was actually an organization I worked for. It was very proactive. I would say it was proactive. See, you know what I mean? Like it was,
Yeah.
and it did
Forward
happen.
thinking.
Yeah, yeah.
And what's interesting, and I think this is my takeaway that I often share with people, is the way we define diversity contributes to people hiding part of themselves, right?
Gotcha.
If you
Yeah,
don't feel included in the diversity conversation, then you're more likely not to raise your hand and to
yeah,
start a
yeah, yeah.
disability conversation, or to start an age conversation, or to start a mother's group. If you don't feel included in the DEI conversation, then you're more likely to hide part of yourself.
I agree. I fully agree. And that was really the mission. We are talking about that actually quite often when what are the topics, what are the things that we need to share that really resonate. And the woman, like the women's ERGs had a lot of motherhood as well, work-life balance, what does it look like? The career development. So, but interesting that specific on the disability ERG, it's very interesting. It's very it's eye-opening how it shows up, right? So.
Well, and the
And
impact is if we don't feel included, right, then we don't feel
yes,
seen, we don't feel
absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. That's what it is a miss. That's why I'm thinking,
it
oh,
impacts retention, it impacts engagement, it
absolutely.
impacts innovation and creativity, which is all the things at the bottom line of companies that they're looking to create. It's what we all desire, right? We all desire to feel seen and to feel heard.
Oh yes, oh yes,
And so how do we create
absolutely,
spaces?
absolutely. All right. So, but now I'm curious a bit more. Going personal, Ruth is okay.
Yeah, let's do it.
So, and this is the work life for badasses, and I know you have like a badass life, right? So it's like busy on stages, writing books, and with your life traveling, right? So I'm curious about your career, right, and your dynamic career, and even like you can come back like before, but I'm curious right now. So how you balance, right, and what are the approach balancing your professional responsibilities with your personal life?
Oh, that's a good one. I think there's a couple things that I use as part of my practice in my balance life. There's a journaling practice that I have in terms of
Oh, okay.
I try to do it every morning. There's a meditation piece to my life. There's a getting outside and taking a walk. I know during COVID, a lot of people were unsure of what was happening, right? Most of us were unsure of what was happening. And I made it a practice, a daily practice to go out and get a walk in every day. Central Park became my mental health. And so those pieces are kind of the foundation. And then the other piece to it, which you just referred to, is my travel life. I love to travel and have,
Okay.
because that's what balances. I live in New York City. I love New York City. I do a lot here. I go to theater. I try to do all of the cultural things I can. Theater is probably the biggest. But then it's how do you get outside of your bubble, right? How do you see the world? How do you think about perspective? How do you see how others think about the things that
Oh, yes.
maybe thinking or not thinking about? And that's where travel and adventure are my grounding. I don't love to go back to the same place a lot because I like to see the world. There's so
Oh,
many interesting things and so many interesting people in this world with difference and different experiences.
wow. Amazing.
That's the grounding for me for sure.
Yeah. Thank you. And on the topic, so from badass to badass, any advice to our listeners?
Yeah, I think the first step is to think about, based on this episode, what is it that you're hiding? What's holding you back? What's holding you back from connecting? What's holding you back from thriving? What's holding you back from being a badass? What is it because we can take those things that we're hiding and we can put them under a rug, right? Or we can shove them into a drawer and not look at them. They will find us again. They will find us. They will show up in terms of how we connect with others, how we are showing up at work in terms of our creativity and our connection. And so it's starting the work, just asking yourself, what is it that I'm hiding? How is it holding me back? That's the place to start, because whether you're in a career where you're thinking this is kind of it, like this is where I'm going to stay and
Mm-hmm.
going to be, is that enough? And if it is, that's great. If it's holding you back though, because you're not willing, or not even not willing, but you're scared to share your dreams and your aspirations, that's a place to tap into, AnnaJo. Like, what are those aspirations that I know I shared at one point of this idea of a movement with a friend. And I said, I really am creating a movement around unhiding. And that person rolled their eyes. And I said, you just rolled your eyes at me. And they said, I did. And I said, yeah. And those are not the cheerleaders and the champions of who we need to surround ourselves with around our dreams and aspirations. We want those people who, yes, they can be curious about what is this movement you're talking about? What does it look like? but how do we actually invite people in who will support our dreams and aspirations, who will
Yeah.
support the idea and be curious about the questions of what we're hiding. Like allowing for that is such a gift, but it starts with ourselves. It starts with the idea of when people are listening to this podcast, your audience, what is it that I'm hiding? How is it holding me back?
Wow. That's a powerful advice here. The badass from badass to badass. Wow, that's a good one. That's a good one. Okay, but before,
Especially if people, sorry, I was just going to say, especially if I
yeah,
don't
yeah.
want anyone to have to hide for 25 years like I did. 25
Mm,
years is exhausting. It's a lifetime of hiding. It's lonely. It's exhausting. It takes a toll on our mental and our physical health. It took a toll on mine. If I can offer anyone a shorter time frame to get to unhiding, that's my goal. Even just one person.
mm. You are on a mission. And because you are on a mission, would you share with us what the future holds for you?
Yeah, my North Star is creating an institute for unhiding, for creating
Mm,
spaces in workplaces and in communities where it is safe to be different, where it is safe. And I think I have a big job over the next 4/8/20 years of creating spaces where people, it's okay to feel different and share that difference, because we shouldn't have to hide those parts of ourselves that are different. So that's the goal, is creating this institute that has a research component, that has a media component, being able to share. The reason I created my own publishing company, AnnaJo Single-Handed Press, is so that people could start to share their
mm.
stories of hiding and unhiding, so that it's allowing people to start to give voice to those spaces of what people are hiding. And then
Wow.
the freedom and the relief that comes from unhiding. It's like literally like, I think of hiding as a deep inhale. And then what
Yes.
hiding is like exhaling. And that
Oh
really,
my God, I love that analogy. Oh, I love it. Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
that's the
That's
North
a
Star.
good visual. Yeah.
Create spaces for connection. How do we create spaces for unhiding?
Here we are. Oh boy, that's very good. Okay. Before we end this podcast, can we do a rapid fire type of questions? Let's
Let's do it.
go.
Always makes
Let's
me
go.
unhide. Let's do it.
What is your favorite superhero?
Ooh, I I think it's yeah, I know it is. I think it's Wonder Woman, because she has all of the power within her, and yet she invites others in, right? She
Mhm,
allows for connection. She allows for, and yet she knows what needs to get done. She builds connection. I think it's Wonder Woman. Yeah.
mhm.
If that's a top of mind, that just came in.
Gotcha. What is your favorite place?
Ooh, so I have three favorite places. I love Paris, I love Prague, and I love Cape Town. And
Oh,
those are three places I love to travel. I also love New York City. I adore New York City. And even when it's gone through ups and downs, I love New York. I was never planning to live here, AnnaJo. This was not the bucket list on my bucket list. And yet it's 30 years. And
wow.
I love
I love New York City too, but they are quite different places, right? Paris, Prague,
They
Cape
have
Town.
similarities. Like they have spaces, and if we got even deeper, they're just spaces where I feel like you can explore and be
That's
comfortable.
true. That's true. Absolutely. I agree because I know those places as well, and I can see that. I can see. Yes,
They're
you're
all
right.
magic. They're all magical.
You are right. What is your favorite music?
Ooh, so I am a a pop sensation person. I love Britney Spears. I love Taylor Swift. I love pop. Anything I can sing along to that hypes up my energy. I love boy
Oh,
bands from the 90s. I mean, I really do. Like, yeah, whether it's
oh, good.
Backstreet Boys, any NSYNC, I'm in. I'm in.
That's so funny. I love that. What is
Totally.
your favorite book?
Um, I have two. There's I think a lot about the Diary of Anne Frank. I
Mm,
was able to go to Amsterdam and go to Anne
hmm.
Frank's house, and so
Yeah.
I understood what that hiding space was, and having a journal, being
Oh
able
my
to
God. Yeah.
write, share thoughts is so
Yeah.
important. And I think there was another book I remember in high school that just changed my life, and it was My Antonia. And I have to revisit that book because I feel like it changed my life in high school and I want to continue to understand why. But I would say if you're asking me right off the top, it's definitely my Anne Frank, The Diary of Anne Frank. It's
Okay. Favorite dessert?
ooh, 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 ooh. And I shouldn't think too hard about this. I know I really love warm apple pie with vanilla ice cream on top.
Okay.
Like it is a go-to. Yeah. And rice pudding. I feel like who doesn't love rice pudding? I don't know.
Yes. I always love to know this one because you never know. If you invite me to your house, I know what to bring.
I am definitely inviting you to my house. And the dessert, and I love chocolate. I mean, but you know what? Chocolate's an acquired thing as an adult. I don't think I always loved chocolate, but dark chocolate now, if
Yes, me too.
something dark
Mhm.
chocolate, pretzels, dark chocolate, and it's supposed to be healthy. So I'm like, yeah, I'm okay.
Yeah, true. All right, Ruth, just to end this episode, so would you like to share with us where we can find you?
I thank you. And thank you, AnnaJo, for giving me the space to share this message of unhiding and amplify it. I spend a lot of my time. So I have a website, ruthrathblott.com. I spend a lot of my time on social media, on LinkedIn at Ruth Rathblott, and also on Instagram at Ruth Rath. And that's where I spend the majority of my time. Yeah.
Yeah.
My
So,
book.
and yes, and everything will be on the show notes as well, your 2 books and the link for your TEDx because they are amazing. Especially the first book is so good because it has so much the details that you present there regarding of your life, like because since you were a little kid, right? So I think it's such a good book, and at least the first one because it has those details so vivid.
Oh, and the second one is really meant to think about you this time. It turns the
Yeah,
you
I
like
know.
do the work. Like, where's the inventory? What have you where have you felt like you had
Yeah,
part of yourself to fit in?
I love it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being a guest. It's an honor to have you here on AnnaJoTalks Work Life for Badasses. All right. Thank you so much. And thank you for tuning in to AnnaJoTalks Work Life for Badasses. I hope today's episode has inspired you to live your life on your own terms. Until next time, remember, you are powerful, you are capable, and you can do hard things. See ya.
You've been listening to AnnaJo Talks, Work Life for Badasses, with your host, Coach AnnaJo. To learn more about Coach AnnaJo, her blogs, and her coaching programs on how to achieve the work-life harmony you deserve, head on over to AnnaJoTalks.com. Make sure to follow Coach AnnaJo at Coach AnnaJo on all social media platforms. And don't forget to subscribe and listen to all of the AnnaJo Talks episodes on Apple, Google, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. AnnaJo Talks, Work Life for Badasses was produced by Thrive Loud Productions. Thanks for listening.